In this episode of Derp Star, I added the black hole to the boss spawner and added a title screen to display the boss name when it spawns. Now that I'm done adding features to the black hole, I can delete it from the main scene. Then I'll open up the boss spawner in the derp space dimension. This is just a 2D node with a timer. I'll rename the timer to make it more generic, and then I'll move the wyrm spawner script into a new scene. Now I'll make a new scene for the space wyrm intro sequence. This will be a 2D node. And I'll attach a script and paste the wyrm spawner code here. The first function just creates a wormhole and connects to the open signal. So I'll delete that and add the wormhole directly to the intro scene. Then connect the opened signal to the spawnWyrm function. Here I'll add as a child of the parent, which is the boss spawner, and build with 0 segments for testing. And I'll be refactoring the boss flash script, so I don't need to call hide flash from here. Then I'll add a closed signal to the wormhole and emit the signal if the animation name is closed. Then I'll connect this signal to the wormhole closed function in the intro and call queueFree here to clean up the intro scene. Then in the boss spawner, I'll add an export variable for the boss list array. Godot version 4.0 has typed arrays, but I'm using the latest stable version, which is 3.5.1. So in the inspector, I'll increase the size to 2 and set the type to an object. Then drag the space wyrm intro scene and the black hole into the array. Then I'll set the spawn timer to 1 second for testing with one shot and auto start enabled. Connect the timeout signal to the spawn boss function. Here I'll assign boss to a random element from the boss list and make a new instance. Then set the boss position equal to the derp star global position and add the boss as a child of the boss spawner node. Now it randomly spawns a black hole or a space wyrm when you start a new game. Next, I'll make it restart the spawner timer when you kill the boss. So I'll add a function called boss defeated to the spawner script to restart the timer. Then I'll call this from the space wyrm and black hole after queueFree. And I'll also re-enable the increase size on process for testing in the black hole. Now it continuously spawns new bosses as you kill them. Of course, the duration between spawns will be longer in the real game. Next, I'll add a title screen to warn the player when a new boss has spawned. In the main scene, I'm using a canvas layer as the root for the GUI elements, so they stay locked to the camera and don't move around in-game. I'll get rid of the current boss flash and add a control node called boss under the overlay. Then in layout, select full rect to expand it to the size of the screen. Then I'll add a color rect as a child called flash and expand this to the full rectangle as well. Then under canvas item, I'll add a new shader material, which opens up an editor at the bottom. I'll be using the GD Quest gradient map tutorial, which converts the image to grayscale and then maps it to a gradient. So I'll copy the code from here, and I'll put this link in the description as well, and paste it in the editor. This adds a gradient parameter, which I can set through the editor under material shader params. So I'll add a new gradient texture, and you can change the colors as needed and add new ones as well if you want. So now it's only one color because the original shader is for a sprite. So I'll get the screen texture here, which maps to the screen. However, it's actually upside down. So if I change UV to screen UV, now you can see it matches up with the screen. Then I'll add a label node to display the boss name. I'll make it full screen under layout and set the default text. Align the vertical and horizontal in the center. And under theme overrides, set the font color to black. Then in fonts, under overrides, I'll make a new dynamic font and drag the TTF file to font data. Under settings, I'll increase the font size and the outline size as well, which is white by default. Now I'll add an animation player to make the screen fade in and out. I'll add a new animation called Flash, set the duration to 3 seconds. Then at the beginning, I'll map the boss node's visibility modulate alpha channel to 0 and create the reset track. Halfway through, I'll turn the opacity all the way up. And at the end, turn it back down to 0. Now you can play the animation to see the screen fade in and out. Now I'll make a new script for the boss flash configuration custom resource. Set the class name to boss flash config and add export variables for the text and gradient. And later I can add more variables like font size and color as well. Then I'll open up the black hole script and add a new export variable for the flash config. You still can't define the type as a custom resource, so I'll set the type to resource, then select boss flash config in the editor, set the text to black hole, and make the gradient. I'll set the first color to a light gray and the second to black, which will essentially invert the color scheme and make it negative. Then I'll add the flash config variable to the space wyrm intro scene as well. Select boss flash config as the type. Set the text to space wyrm and make a new gradient that goes from dark purple to magenta and white at the end. Then I'll add a play boss flash function to the overlay script in the main scene. This takes a boss flash config as a parameter. Then I'll get the boss flash material, and I need to set the shader gradient. So there's a slash in the property name, so you use get shader param slash gradient. Dot gradient equals config dot gradient, and I'll set the boss label text to the config text, then play the animation at the end. And now in the boss spawner, I'll call connector dot overlay play boss flash and pass the boss dot flash config. So now it plays a boss screen every time a new boss is spawned. That's all for this episode of Derp Star. Thank you for watching and have a great day.